Hi, welcome to Analytics for All. This is lesson 13.1 of our second module of our Python for Data Science course. So this is connecting to a Microsoft SQL server. I call this 13.1 because I did a lesson 13 on connecting to a MySQL server. So I want you to see kind of the differences and ways you can approach this. Of course, there's many servers out there, but I'm only going to handle a couple. The main reason for these two servers I checked, number one, they're really popular. Number two, they're free. Uh, and MySQL is, I think, is one of the best because it's so easy to install and it works with any operating system out there. Really, SQL Server, it can be a little iffy on some operating systems. Not really sure if it works like in Mac or not. They claim it does, but I've never tried it myself. But anyway, we're going to work here with SQL Server. So if you don't have an instance installed, it's okay. You can just watch. But if you do, you can play along here. Let's go ahead and hop over to the screen and get back to what we're supposed to be doing here instead of just looking at me. So let's go ahead, and this is my SQL Server. But as with all my lessons, I have a full write-up on my website, analyticsforall.org. I'll put a link down in the description. And in this lesson, if you scroll down at the very beginning, you've got a little set here, code that you can copy and paste into your SQL Server that will create a database for you to work with on here. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little here and see if we can play with this. Let's see if I got the right one. Okay, yeah. So here's the code. It's pretty simple to follow. It's basically, whoops, where'd it go? I just lost my SQL Server. Here we go. All right. So we're creating a database called Sandbox, and in the Sandbox, we're creating a table called Employee ID, and it's going to have a couple of rows here. And if you look over here on my left, you'll see that I have it now in my table, Employee ID, and it's got 3 columns. All right. So again, this is not a SQL lesson. This is a Python lesson. Let's go ahead and hop into our Python now. And we'll start by adjusting the screen here. All right, good. All right, so we're going to start by, number one, importing this module called PyODBC. It's basically creating an ODBC connection to connect to your Python. It's a Python ODBC connector. It does a lot more than just connect to SQL Server, but that's all we're going to do in this lesson just to get started. And so to do it, I'm going to create a connection string. So I use PyODBC connect. If you don't have this, if you go to import PyODBC and it fails, you're going to have to use a pip or a conda install. I do have a link. I'll put a link down for a video I've got. If you go to mark 7, the 7-minute mark, it'll show you how to do that if you haven't done that. But if you install the Anaconda distribution, like I recommended at the beginning of the course, you'll have this. It comes with it. So here we are. Let's look at what we've got in this connector here. Now notice I've got it just separated here by lines and they're in quotes, single quotes. I don't use double quotes here, just single quotes, separate by lines. There's no commas separating them. But the first one's driver, and then this is curly brackets, SQL Server. Then the server name, this is just the name of the server. So if you've got here, you'll see it. Here's my server name. Desktop, it's the one that I forgot to change the name when I installed it, so it gave me a crappy name. Database is Sandbox, because that's the database we want to work on, so we've already installed that. My username, I created an a user for this and this password, and And then final thing, you want to use MySQL underscore PyODBC ://, and that's my connection. So the CNXN is my connection. Then I'm going to apply this connection to create a cursor. A cursor is what lets me iterate through the files and look at stuff. It lets me interact with the tables. So let's run this, and it goes. Okay, it's connected. Now let's go ahead and select the name from sys.databases. That's a table that tells us all the databases that sit within our SQL Server. Hit that, master temp model, and that sandbox we created. So if we look in here and we look at the databases, that's what we've got. System databases, that's where your master, your temp, and all that are. So that gives us a list of our databases. We can quickly go ahead and let's look at the tables just from Sandbox. I'm adding Sandbox before the information schema.tables and running a loop. And this is not a SQL lesson, so if you're not too up on SQL, I've got some SQL lessons to go about on my website. I'll put a link there. And I'm also going to build a SQL course. But just kind of just follow along if you're not too sharp on SQL. But this is pretty simple to follow. So anyway, this gives us the tables and their base table, DBO, the employee ID, which is the main one we're looking at. The rest of these are kind of meta tables, not really stuff we're worried about. So let's go ahead. Now we're doing this, I should point out, we're using this we created this cursor. We're using cursor.execute to execute our SQL commands. And what we're putting in here is really nothing more than just SQL commands. This is a select command. So if you know anything about SQL, that's the first thing you learn. Let's go ahead. Let's show we can do things like create tables and stuff from with Python. So we're going to do curse execute, and we're just going to create a table employee, not employee ID. This will be a separate table employee, and this will be ID, which is going to be an integer, employee name, which is going to be a varchar or a string, and date of birth, which will be a date. We'll execute that. And then we're going to send in some information. We're going to use the insert into employee. And here I've got the names of my columns and then the values, 23, Ben, and notice I've got these three parentheses around the, I'm not sorry, three quotes marks around here, single quotes. That way I can use quotes inside here. If I use the three, it allows me to use single quotes inside here. So if I go ahead, I run this, but now if I go down and check out, let's go into our thing. Let's create a new query. And as always is good, let me get this out of the way so you can see, sandbox. It's always good to start off your commands, letting it know which database you want to use. Then we'll go select star from employee. We'll execute this, and we're getting a spinning wheel of death, because what's happening is there's no commit. What I didn't do here was I didn't apply this commit. Now I want you to notice the commit command is not using the cursor, it's using the actual connection I made up here, so the CNXN. So you do the CNXN commit, and now when I go in here and I check out our table and I run this, now I'll have information, now I'll have data in there. Okay? Again, so keep in mind, anytime you go to input, change, alter some data, stuff like that, make sure you run the commit command or nothing's going to happen. Okay, so let's go ahead and move this so I can see some more. Let's go ahead, we can do it again. We're going to put in more values, and again with the three quotes I can do multiple lines. So I'm going to insert into employee my values. I've got 3 Fred, I got a Lynn, I got a Sarah, and I've got the commit command already in there. So when I run this, I should be able to go ahead and run this, and as you can see, now I've got 4 rows. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our table, which is I'm sure one thing you want to do. We're going to select star from employee, and it already knows what database we're in because I've selected that up here. So this already knows we're using Sandbox. So that's the same thing as when I put this use Sandbox at the top of my command here. But we're going to run the query, and then we're going to pass. We use this fetch all command to pass the entire results of the query into this list here. So LST. And then from using a for loop, I'm going to iterate through the list to give me each row. So there you go. Here's your 4 rows. Okay. Now we go ahead, and if we wanted to look at the columns in this, because we just pulled the cursor, we can apply this. We're going to use a list comprehension. So column 0. 0 will be the first one there in the curse description. Curse description. Description gives us some information on the cursor we've just run, which is the query we just ran. So I can return the column. So it returns my column's ID, name, and again, so it's column 0 for column in curse descriptions. So basically it's the first element in the curse descriptions, cursor descriptions. All right, now finally, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to put this into a pandas data frame. All right, so check this out. So we're going to import pandas as PD. We're going to create a list, D, and then for X in list, we're still looking at the list up here. We've pulled this cursor, catch all, fetch all. We're going to append. Now, if you look closely, I'm actually creating a dictionary in here. So this is a curly bracket. ID, colon, then I have x.id. So I'm calling each column up here by name. x.employee name, x.dob. You know, for each list, each element, each row, I'm calling that, and I'm going to pass it into this dictionary, which will be part of a list, and then I'm going to send that as a data frame using pandas, and hit that, and there we go. All right. Again, this was quick. Again, this is not a comprehensive SQL lesson. I'm going to be making some more. I have some SQL lessons on my site. I'll be making some more. The main thing I want you to know is that the reality is you're not going to be getting most of your data from Excel files and CSV. You're going to be pulling it from SQL databases because that's where it stores stuff. You can store more information that way. So it's good to get used to working with them. I'll try to get some information out there for how you can connect things like Teradata and Oracle and stuff. I'm not going to load those on my computer and run, but at least get you some information out there. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Send me a comment down in the comments if something you want me to work on. If you're like, hey, well, how do I drop tables, or how do I, create a database using SQL? I'll create a video for you. If it's something that's in my capability, if it's Python, R, SQL, Tableau, statistics, that kind of thing, I'll create a video for you. Again, thank you very much. This is Ben Larson. I look forward to seeing you again.